Hey everyone, Eric Hayden here on YouTube. Point of today's video is to show you a little bit about what the garden looks like after you do some renovation with weeds. The whole point of these videos, going back a couple years, has been a video blog. So I show you everything for beginners or people that want more information. We talk about deadheading, how much to water, fertilization. That's all good stuff. But I also think it's also a good thing to add honest critiques of the garden itself. So I show it when it doesn't look the best. When you get back from vacation, you've got weeds that are kind of going out of control. Because I think it's important to see those types of things in the garden. If you see something that's perfect all the time, that's not something you can really live up to. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what we're doing with the weeds that have gotten out of control and some of the blooms in the garden itself. First things first, if you've seen some of the videos, prior to us going away, I mentioned transplanting some things on our deck into some bigger pots, and this has really worked out well. These are 15-gallon pots. We put a couple of squash plants in those. They have done well. They're starting to get a little touch of powdery mildew on them. The tomatoes are doing well, as are the peppers. A couple things been battling blossom end rot. That was fixed by some of that liquid fertilizer that had a little bit more phosphorus and also potassium in it and some calcium. The other thing we've been battling, the tomatoes look really good, but we're starting to pick them a little earlier. We haven't grown tomatoes in the south before. We tried in the soil, and the combination of nematodes and different issues going on, they just didn't grow well. So this year in a pot, they're doing fantastic. You can see this one is quite big. When we let them get fully ripened, all the way red, the birds had at them. So we've been picking them a little bit earlier and harvesting or letting them ripen on the windowsill of our house. So certainly learning some things. As far as the rose garden goes, again, from a distance, it looks really, really good. This is our second bloom of roses. Veterans Honor is another one that I just cannot recommend enough. It's easy to get in commerce. It is a beautiful red rose. What it lacks in fragrance, it makes up for bloom size and color. And again, we've just had about 2 inches of rain, not a spot on these petals, and we haven't covered them. So unlike some other reds that I have, this can hold up to heat and rain. So it's looking really good. That last video I mentioned, not sure if I've got some herbicide damage or not. I'm still a little perplexed because some of it is on the inside of the bush where I don't really spray in the middle of the beds, but that's for another day. I want to show you one quick bloom of Sunny Sundays because that is just an outstanding one with some water droplets on it. So the point of this video is to talk a little bit about what we came back to, and that was a lot of weeds. If you've seen some of my past videos, I mentioned putting down a pre-emergent, and I certainly do a mulch. And the pre-emergent has helped, but the combination of some rain while we were gone, and then also just being gone for a while, some of this nutsedge has grown up. The pre-emergent didn't prevent it. It was listed, or it wasn't listed on the label, so I'm not surprised. And I don't know whatever weed this is, but I have a ton of the nutsedge and whatever this is. If you can identify it in the comments, that would be good. So it got really out of control. So I did a little bit of Roundup and waited a couple days. Based on the herbicide damage from 5 weeks ago, I'm probably not going to do that again, but what's done is done. It was already put down before I kind of realized I may have had some damage in the past. And then after a couple days to let the plant absorb it, because if you read any of the instructions, especially when you do herbicides in the lawn, they say to do it a couple days after you cut the grass so that the grass is not damaged, and then wait for a couple days before you cut it because you want the weeds to actually absorb the chemical. So I did that, and then yesterday I went through with a weed whacker and just nicked everything. I'm hoping that the herbicide went down into the roots and killed the whole thing, but in the meantime I just didn't want to hand pull everything, so I just lopped it off with a weed whacker. And we'll see, hopefully that will gradually die back here over the coming weeks. But it was a quick way to just make the garden look tidy. I know on this video it might not look as good, but this was about a foot high, these weeds in the garden, and I'll do some hand pulling by the beds themselves. I mentioned in the prior video getting some good growth despite the heat. Today is a cool day, but because of the heat, the blooms are smaller. This is a Hot Princess. You can see a beautiful spiral form to it. Much, much bigger bloom in the spring and fall when it's cooler, but still nonetheless, that's a pretty pink. And again, just to pick on a little bit, you can see some of the brown marks on it from either thrips or water drops, versus the Veterans Honor. We didn't have any of that because it's just such a outstanding bloom. So we've got some deadheading to do in the garden. I wanted to show you the weeds. I'm going to show you a before and after here in a second. The other thing that has done well, I haven't watered it at all this year by hand. Some surprise it's done that well, but then I realized one of our irrigation sprinklers does hit it. We planted these at Easter as seeds in little egg cartons, and then transplanted it to 6-packs, you know, the containers you get at the store. I'll keep a lot of those. And then now, and then put them in the garden probably a month and a half ago. It's looking quite good. I forget what kind of daisy this is. I've never grown this white one. I'll have to look at the seed packet, but really pretty with the purple on the inside. The others I've grown before for sure. These are zinnias, the pinks, the yellows, the peaches, the fuchsia. That's a really pretty zinnia. I think these are giant. They're about 2.5, 3 feet tall. And then of course, a lot of you probably recognize these cosmos. It's a pretty wildflower garden. In the past, we've tried to do some of these flowers, and they had a little trouble when we started them in the ground getting established. They would blow over because of our winds here with our proximity to the coast. Looking around, I don't see too many blooms worth showing, except maybe I see a couple secrets, and then Pope John Paul II. This is a newer one, also available, pretty widespread in commerce. It's got a little thrip damage and water damage, but you can see the nice spiral to that. So what I want to show you is, again, these beds were sprayed lightly with Roundup. Some of these other ones over here, my compost pile. This is an old compost pile. I'll try to link below to what it looked like before. It was pretty terrible, but we planted a black diamond, crepe myrtle, and then 2 encore azaleas. And these really prove where you get your plants is very important. These azaleas haven't even been in a whole year. Same variety, maybe a slightly different variety, but according to the tag, it was supposed to grow the same height. We got these at the big box stores. These are doing okay. Same soil pH, same prep. They're doing okay. They're certainly not dying, but they're not doing as well as these. And we got these from one of the local garden stores that really, any plant we've gotten from those has done well. So sometimes it might cost a little bit more to shop local at your garden center, but a lot of times you can get better quality plants. Nonetheless, this was an old compost pile. We mulched it with pine straw, and then when we came back, it was just crazy with weeds. So same thing as the rose garden, sprayed with Roundup, waited a couple days, and then to make it look halfway decent, took the weed whacker to cut it down. And so now I'm going to cover it with pine straw. And you can see where I haven't weed whacked in the paths where it's just 100% crabgrass, that Roundup is taking effect with that yellowing. But this is just a quick and dirty way. I want to show you, again, not everything's perfect in every garden. Had a weed issue, especially rose gardens to some extent, but certainly here, our old compost pile, and then over here where we have some of the encore azaleas and then these canna lilies. So this is the before. You can see you've got the bales of pine straw. This is one of the cheaper ways to mulch down south. These are about $5 a bale, and that will cover, I got 12 of them, cover the old compost pile and also the climbing roses as well. This is the before for the blueberries as well. And again, same type of thing, put a pre-emergent in this garden, not so much where the edibles were, what we did over here. And for the most part, it kept most of the weeds down. The only ones that have popped through is that nutsedge, and then some of these we just hit with Roundup the other day. And you can see some of them, like this crabgrass, is already yellowing. So hit it with a little Roundup, wait a couple days, weed whack where necessary to bring down the height a little bit, and then now we're going to put in these bales of pine straw. So this is the before. In addition, we've got to tie up this climbing rose. So this is what it looks like now. Now I'm going to go ahead and put down the bales of pine straw, tie up this rose, and it should look drastically better than it did a couple days ago where we had the roses falling over and the weeds. And again, especially certain gardens where I didn't do as much pre-emergent. You can certainly see the canna lilies have grown since we've been gone as well. They're up probably about 8.5 feet tall now. So here's the after when I do the pine straw bales.